Welcome back. Swedish officials have blocked a request made by the Sweden Democrats Party for data on the link between the crime rate and immigration. The government's not made such statistics available since 2005, but with the recent influx of migrants, concerns in some European countries, including Sweden, are growing. The request for the report came after a study showed women in Sweden feel increasingly unsafe. A Sweden Democrats MP claims migrants are often overrepresented in crime statistics, but that disappears when socio-economic factors are taken into account. Kevin Owen discussed it with international lawyer Celine Bardet and Maximilian Krah from the Alternative for Germany party.
We have a clear tendency that the government is lacking transparency and trying to suppress facts. So the statistics we see are usually only the half-truths, and even the half of the truths that we can see is disastrous for the European liberal way of handling migration.
Are you saying, Maximilian, there's a direct correlation between immigrants or people coming in applying for asylum from all these war zones that we've talked about over the last 18 months, 2 years, and crime rates in Europe?
Then, of course, you have a direct correlation.
To put a direct correlation with the immigrant and the immigration, this is where I'm saying this is a bit dangerous, because when you do that, then you open a door on something that is not really factual, and you go into, position.
If we talk about migration, we always talk about migration from the Middle East and from parts of Africa. And migration from these countries cause tremendous problems for inner security in the Western world.
I'm very skeptical about that. First of all, I don't think, statistics, first of all, it has to be substantiated, and I'm not that sure that it is. Like in France, for example, it's not something that we can clearly substantiate. And the second thing, you have to see the situation, the social situation and the poverty. We know that people who are in a fragile situation in the society, they are inclined to to commit more criminal acts.
We had this case in Innsbruck not so long ago. In fact, I believe we've got the archive clip very recently of some women we spoke to there, just after New Year's Eve this was.
I don't feel that safe as a woman going around, especially in the night, in the dark hours.
No, I not feel safe.
In the evening, I don't feel as safe as I did a couple of years ago. You can't blame the police for this. Politicians should be making changes.
The political situation needs to change. As for the sex assaults, it's terrible that they're happening here as well. It's no longer nice to go out in Innsbruck during the evenings.
So this is one thing. How you feel and what is the reality is something, for me, globally, a little bit different.
If we would have transparent statistics, then it would be obvious that immigration from certain regions in the world, the Middle East, Pakistan, Afghanistan, North Africa and parts of the remaining Africa, is directly correlated to crime, to violent crime, sexual crime in Europe.
You cannot look at that solely from the perspective of what would be the ethnicity in bracket of the people. You need to look at that from a social, perspective.
Last year, Swedish police were accused of covering up mass sexual assaults allegedly committed by migrants at a music festival in Stockholm. Responding to those accusations, a police officer admitted that the authorities haven't revealed all the information because it would benefit right-wing parties. Russian athlete Anastasia Bezderova has questioned the impartiality of German broadcaster ARD's new documentary on Russian doping. She was one of the interviewees for the film, which airs on Sunday. I got more details earlier from sports columnist Alan Moore and correspondent Nadira Tudor.
Well, it's interesting. They approached her on Facebook, and initially she decided that she wasn't going to respond, and then she realised, or in her mind she thought if she refused that would look like an admission of guilt, so she did respond. She said that the message was given in an aggressive and demanding manner. The channel asked her to answer questions and gave her a very strict deadline. She then questioned why they were asking her for this information in this way, and they simply said that these were journalistic questions and reiterated the deadline to her. Now, she's worried that she'll come across badly, hence her reason for speaking out now. She thinks that ARD will take the words that she said out of context and be biased and damning. She only agreed to give RT an interview off camera in the written form because of this.
I am sick and tired of these pseudo-investigations. ARD launched this campaign, and everything about it only fits the company's agenda. But I think it's wrong to stay silent, and they will consider this an admission of guilt. So I answered their questions. But I'm sure they will include only the parts they want in their film, which supports their opinion. You know, I even suggested to send them my account pages from WADA's anti-doping administration and management system, ADAMS. I said if you want objective data, I have it, but they didn't seem to care much about it.
ARD is like a dog with a bone on this issue, though, isn't it? It's been onto this, the Russian sports doping allegations, since day one. Their first programme is what sparked WADA into action, of course, but since then it's kept on about Russia, about Russia, about Russia. Why doesn't it widen out into all the other countries that are accused of doping, or where there is evidence of doping, countries like Kenya, for instance?
It suits the geopolitical narrative at the moment that Russia is the whipping boy. Russia is the bad boy or girl of world sport, where we all know that doping is a global epidemic. It could be a case that this is such a huge problem that WADA need to focus on a case-by-case basis. So we're waiting now for ARD to turn their fire on to the UK, onto the USA or other countries that we know doping is actively working for them.
Ladira, in terms of the relationship between WADA and Anastasia, she's had reason to be concerned before, hasn't she?
Well, she certainly has, and she talks about an incident prior to the filming of this documentary in a totally unrelated incident. She has spoken out and said that she was bullied by a number of men that she identified as representatives from WADA. This particular incident that she talks about is embedded in her brain. She said they use violent tactics and unacceptable interrogation techniques.
In 2015, during the European Championship in Prague, there was an attempt to lock me in a room with 3 Interpol servicemen who worked on behalf of WADA. Then they tried to interrogate me using physical force, and I had no idea what they wanted to discuss with me acting like this. I have a scanned version of my complaint from Prague, where I questioned the doping control procedures, but no one replied, and no one at the Court of Arbitration for Sport even cared.
So as you can see, lots of questions are going to be asked after her special exclusive RT interview with us. Now, the ARD documentary comes out on the 22nd of January, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be loads of controversy, as usual, once it's aired, as is the case with these ongoing doping scandals.
Yeah. Now, Alan, just finally to you, we've talked about this a lot, I know, but Russia's always denied the allegations, and when they first came out, Russia engaged with WADA, started to put a number of measures into place, leapt into action, a lot of quite significant measures for a country to take in terms of the relationship between government and sport. Why aren't the remedies being taken into account, even at this stage?
I think it doesn't really matter what Russia does. No matter what Russia does, whether Russia completely outlaws sport in totality in Russia, it's not going to be enough, because wiping out doping in sport is not the aim of these people, whether it's in WADA, whether it's in the Court of Arbitration of Sport, which is different. So making sport clean in Russia is not important for them. It's basically just like making Russia a further whipping boy for the world, so that there's always a bad guy, and that's a simple fact.
Next on RT International, Going Underground looks into Britain's links to the bloodshed in Yemen. On air in Britain and Ireland, though, Sputnik meets a Brexit campaign donor who's now taking on the establishment directly.